All right. Welcome, everyone, again to another exciting and amazing session of the Horne Show. And today with me, we have Eefke van der Wouw. She's from the Netherlands, and she's going to be taking us on a journey of all her past 9 lives and current lives, as it seems. And so I'll hand it over to FK to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does, and then we shall jump right in.
Thank you, Maria, and good pronunciations of my name because it's quite difficult. I've learned to pronounce a Dutch name, so thank you for that. And thank you for having me here. I'm really excited. I was really excited to see you and talk a little bit about what we do and how we met each other, maybe somewhere in the session. Um, but yeah, my past lives. Formerly, I've been a UN Youth representative, which is a pretty long title. The full title is a youth representative of the Netherlands on sustainable development to the United Nations. So it's a mouthful. Um, but my mandate ended last November, I think, and now I'm just taking my time to figure out in what way I can improve the world for the better and use my voice or privilege and activism in other ways. Um, and that's where we met as well, right? In the space of the UNFCCC, the UN.
That's true. And maybe you could, I don't know, do you want to be the one to speak about how we met?
Well, I think maybe you can tell your side of the story because I'm
Okay.
really curious how you
Okay,
saw
yeah.
our.
So we did meet Poland 2018, and that was during you had a session with your prime minister, not prime minister, minister for foreign trade, if I remember correctly, and you
Yeah.
invited me, Dion, and Yared to sit on a panel to talk about youth engagement in climate action and what they could do. And I was actually humbled that you asked me to speak, being that it was the very first time that we had met each other. And then from there on, I was like just really curious to know what it is you do more. So the next time we met was at the last COP 2019 in Spain, and you were doing something that I found fascinating, which was the meditation during the koi session. And I felt like, that aspect of mental health is not really handled well, especially with young people in this space. And unfortunately, there's a lot of talk about toxicity, especially in the younger community, which is really sad to hear. And it would be nice for young people to equip themselves with skills of how they can, manage such issues as they try to, save the planet.
Yeah, totally agree. That the first time that we met in Katowice in Poland, I think we haven't even really met when
Yeah.
like I sent you an invite through email. I just looked through the list of which people might be interesting to have a conversation with our uh, prime minister. No, our minister of foreign trade and development cooperation. It was. You're correct. Um, so it was a really interesting first meeting, but I was blown away immediately by the work that you've been doing. Uh, in your space, and also Jared and Dion, of course. Um, and I'm really happy that we now meet again online on this platform
Yeah.
because it's been a year. I
Yes.
think it's
Yes.
been a year. Yeah, more than a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I'll say I'm more blown away by what you do, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show because I see you do so many different things. I wonder how you juggle it, and still maintain a sane head. But still, the things that you do are quite amazing. For example, the hikings that you do and the reason why you do them. So I'll go like to the next question, which I wanted to ask you, which is, why do you think it's important to, reconnect with nature, especially during the past pandemic that has kept everyone, indoors and unable to go out and interact with their friends?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question because I feel like, especially our generation here in the Netherlands, for sure, we're getting more disconnected every generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's less space to go outside. So when people did go outside in the first wave of the pandemic, um, like a lot of people noticed that it was too crowded, which put a lot of pressure on nature itself. So the natural spaces that we have left are too full of people, and we're actually damaging nature, or people didn't remember how to be proper guests in natural parks, leaving trash behind or disturbing young animals. We have some stories of that here in the Netherlands, but um, I think it's so interesting because um, I had to reconnect as well. I think I grew up with a lot of outside time, but over the years, you go to school and then you just end up with your legs folded under a desk, and that's where you'll be on the most hours of the day. And almost every young person that I talk to, and I realize I'm in a bubble. Maybe you are too. Surrounded with a lot of people that feel we have to take action on the climate. Um, and even though we did strike all over the world, there was the mass youth movement that's going on. There's still a generation that can't point out the birds outside of the window, that doesn't recognize the trees in their neighborhood, including myself. I have no clue if a bird is singing, if it's a warning or a mating song or anything, um, which is, I think, quite sad because it's our home as well. It's like this is my house, but the planet is my home as well, and I cannot recognize it anymore because I'm not in that space enough. I mean, even the climate negotiations, you don't see any sunlight. You're in there for 3 weeks, and you start before the sun comes up, and you leave when the sun's already down. So it's so strange that we talk about climate while being so disconnected, many of us.
And so, what do you think? What are some of the ways that you personally have been able to reconnect with nature?
Well, I love hiking a lot, like you mentioned. I kind of discovered it a few years ago when I walked to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. It's a pilgrim's route. For me, it wasn't a religious walk. It was just because I wanted to spend time by myself, basically. But I ended up being in nature for 4 or 5 weeks, like every day walking, and it totally changed me. So I kind of became addicted to spending time in nature, and now every chance I get, I go outside. And if it's possible, every year I'll walk a few hundred miles to reconnect with nature, but also with myself. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't get a lot of time to actually give our thoughts space. So for me, if I go hiking, it's the time when I have enough space to go through things that are in my head or maybe my feelings, and it's just there and it's fine, and then I'll sleep better than I ever do because I've had the whole day a kind of a meditation for me.
Yeah.
It's like really reconnecting to everything. So personally, it's um, yeah, I did a hike, like you mentioned. I did a hike with a lot of youth last summer during a heat wave, by the way, here in the
Okay.
Netherlands. So that was really challenging.
How many
Um,
days did it take you?
that took us, I think, 3 weeks in total.
Wow. And you would camp like on the side of the road or something?
No, we would like I'm strong, but I'm not strong enough to carry my own tent if I
Okay.
don't have to. But we just asked a lot of people if they had a place to stay on our route, and people just really helped us out because they all acknowledged the importance of what we were doing.
Mhm.
So me and some other amazing women on the team just started to hike, and we walked more than 500 kilometers, and just invited you to come along,
Mhm.
and it was really amazing. So because I know how it feels to go out on a hike and it really empowers me, I hope I can inspire other people to experience this feeling as well. So it's kind of a
It's like a
private.
pilgrim. I feel like it's like a
Yeah,
pilgrim that yeah. Yeah, because you
yeah.
get time to meditate and clear your thoughts and everything. I wish I could do that. I'm a little bit afraid of walking by myself at night, but
Oh, yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
you do. I think I had the same fears, especially as a young woman, Maria.
Mhm.
I can imagine. And my first long trip, I wore clothes where I was like, okay, this is really covering and not too flattering. So you don't give any hints
Yep.
or anything. But I've never felt safer. I felt safer on that route than I felt in my own city.
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of because the walking community, if you go out for a walk, you notice how people always greet each other.
Mhm.
Um, that's a thing I started to notice. It's a sort of a community feeling because you're out there in that space that's for everyone.
Yeah.
You all become more equal. It's like another pilgrim, another person on this journey,
Mhm.
and I just feel this instant connection with them. And it's quite different to then walk into the city again, where people are so rushed,
Yes,
uh,
and no one
going
wants to
about.
speak to you. Yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you mean. All right. And also, how do you think? How should I rephrase this question? Yeah, so you speak about the hiking and how it helped you, with the meditation and everything. But how do you think like other young people who aren't able to hike, what other activities do you think they can do to be able to reconnect with nature? But also at the same time, why do you think that less and less of young people are going outdoors and doing outdoor activities?
Mm, okay, it's a really good question. For the last one, I really don't have like a science-based answer or anything. I'm reading a lot of books about this because I'm curious about it as well. Like, why are we getting more and more disconnected while we do really care about the issue? While we do want to protect our natural environment, and we're a generation that really is really conscious about what's happening in the world. So um, if I just look at my own surroundings and the people that I talk to about this, the young people, it's mostly that we do want to be outside a lot. A lot of people are just really busy.
Yeah.
So it's not really a priority.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a sign that maybe like taking care of yourself is not really a priority sometimes. That you have always things to do, you have always more homework to get better grades, work harder to, earn more salary or be a better sister or go visit your grandparents more. There's this kind of stress society going on amongst young people of this always having to do better,
Yeah.
that the slowing down is often forgotten. And I think that nature plays a big part in slowing down. Like
True.
people are um, for me, I can put it best if I say it like this. Um, Riding a bike is not the same as walking because riding a bike is also way quicker.
Yeah.
I could do in a week what I now hike in a month if I go on a bicycle. But
Mhm.
then I rush past a lot of things. So the walking for me, it's the slowest and the most natural pace in which you can go.
Yeah.
Um, so I
That's
think,
that's an interesting way to put it, actually.
yeah, I think if I like trust my feelings on what I see and what I experience myself on this, it might have a correlation with the way we treat ourselves in this fast going society.
Mm.
Um,
And do you think
and
people want to slow down? I also think that maybe the problem is technology because we have everything is instant. It's instant gratification. You have your phone and you immediately want to see your notifications and all that. And you get so caught up in it that you forget the surroundings. I feel like that's probably one of the issues that young people are finding difficult to handle. At least that's what I've observed.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, technology brings us many wonderful things, like us being able to reconnect right now, and the youth movement working together across all boundaries. Um, but yeah, I can agree. It's also quite challenging,
Yes.
because if you go out and spend a lot of time in nature, it doesn't have to be that long. Like I go out for a few weeks, but if you go for a walk by yourself, so without any distractions, it can be quite confronting. So um, things might come up that you don't really want to think about. So I think a lot of the times we're also distracting ourselves from things that might need to be
Attention.
seen.
Yeah.
That need attention. Yeah, and I think you also asked a question before this question
Yes.
about the
Yes.
natural space.
Yes. I think also the question was, yeah, how mental, how nature helps with improving your mental health. You know, like how it did for you when you were meditating.
Yeah, mm, I think that's a different journey for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's certainly clear that we all feel a lot better when we spend time in nature. I recently did a question on my Instagram just out of curiosity, like, how do you feel when you've spent some time in nature? And the answers were, I feel more like myself. I feel so relaxed. I feel connected to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, like, if we feel this way, if we spend time in nature, then why don't we spend more time? That's a really interesting question for me, which I don't have an answer to.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
think
kind
it's a
of,
personal journey, like you said.
yeah,
Yeah. Because we all
yeah,
have our different lives and priorities. So it's up to us to figure out how much time we want to give and if we really want to prioritize taking some time in nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
prioritize ourselves
Yeah.
with that as well. But it's
Mhm.
maybe because it's out of our eyesight more and more. I don't know
That's
if you live in
true.
a rural area, but I live in a city, and it's you really have to go visit nature. You're
Yes.
not really in a forest or a park or
Yeah. That's
whatever.
true.
So
So it becomes very hard to find the green spaces, to go to.
yeah,
And the green spaces that are there are also overcrowded. So then the the interaction is not as intense or as meaningful as it should be. And maybe actually there is, I don't know, have you heard of Salzburg Global?
no,
Okay, so they're based in Austria, and they have this program called Urban Parks where they are trying to green more spaces in cities around the world.
hmm,
Majorly because of this problem, they say that there is not enough spaces for children to go and play, or green spaces, and they're trying to work on policy, but also like action on ground to see what can be done in cities. So you might want to check it out and see, because I think they have also some calls that they release out for people who might be interested in participating.
hmm,
Yeah, I'll
interesting.
send you
Thank
a
you.
link
Yeah,
later. Yeah.
yeah. Please do. Please do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the next question, although I think maybe you answered it, was what drove you to start hiking? I think you answered that question, unless you want to re-answer it.
Um, I think I missed out on one thing that's really important, and that is that my granddad at first took me hiking, like
Okay.
not long hikes, but I had someone in my family who took me outside and taught me the value of nature and not to break off any branches on trees or like to respect nature and just how nice it was to be outside. So I think it started with that for me,
Mm-hmm.
having someone introducing me to this
Mm-hmm.
space.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next life of yours, which is this being a representative for the UN Youth. Let me say it correctly, a UN youth representative to the Netherlands. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, how you got involved, and like what were some of the best experiences you had?
Yeah, so we have an amazing program in the Netherlands, and that's the Youth Delegate program. So we actually get elected by young
Yeah.
people. We have to campaign. It's a really long procedure, but it's really interesting. If you don't get the mandate of being a youth delegate, you at least had a really wonderful experience of engaging with youth. Um, so you can just apply. Everyone between 18 and 24, I think, can apply, and eventually you can become one of the, I think now, 8 youth representatives.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 EU youth representatives. We have 4 or 6 now UN youth representatives on different topics. And I was the one on sustainable development.
Yeah.
And by chance, that was during the time when the youth strikes and the youth movement globally was at its peak, which made it really, really interesting to
Yeah.
be in this space, because my role was basically translating the feelings and the hopes and dreams and opinions of the youth on the street to the UN negotiation tables. I couldn't officially negotiate for the Netherlands. I mean, I'm not a diplomat or anything, but I was part of the Dutch delegation, which is why our program is really amazing, because they really encourage youth participation and see us as a full member of their team in
Mm-hmm.
these spaces. So I was the bridge between a lot of things for 2 years, like between generations, nationally, internationally, and especially the youth and the policies that were being written, because a lot of them can't vote. So part of my job was to make sure that everything they wanted to have in the policies or they find important, that I translated it into these policies that would influence our future.
Mm-hmm. I imagine
So
it must have been a lot of work, but it must have also been rewarding. Because if you're working on policy and you're seeing it coming to fruition, I would imagine that would make you really happy.
yeah, but I think you also know that that could be a really slow,
Yes.
difficult process.
Yeah.
So I was really happy to also be part of the action and the engagement and the actual energy, instead of always the really slow process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting to experience. It was really, I think I spent more than like full time on this, even though it's not a paid job really.
Yeah.
It's like half voluntarily.
Yeah.
Um, but I had such a big drive, and there were so many things going on that were so important. They are still really important.
Mm-hmm.
That I just spend all of my time in this
Yeah.
topic, to make sure that people did feel represented, which is quite a difficult task, because you cannot ever represent all the young people in your country.
That's true. That's true. So, what kind of actions did you do besides the developing policy? What actions on the ground were you able to do?
Mm,
If you don't mind speaking about it.
no, no, no. Of course. Um, what I well, I did so many things. For me, it's just thinking. Okay, like every day is really
Okay.
it's really different, and every
Yeah.
week is totally different. But if I can like summarize it, one of the topics that I worked on was mental health,
Yeah.
like we talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
and that was especially because it wasn't in my agenda when I started, but when I started talking to more and more young people, I noticed this was really a major issue for young people working on climate change, or anything related to what's going on in the world, and then especially also um, the space where youth is being active in this international community, doing everything they can. It's really can be so difficult to go out every day and work really hard, and then see policies being written that are too slow, or not even close to where we have to be able to prevent most of the catastrophe, basically.
Catastrophes. Yeah.
Yeah, so um, I started working on this topic, and I feel like in the Netherlands I kind of opened it up to for people to be able to talk about, because it's a lot of people think it's quite sensitive if you
Yes.
talk about emotions or well-being, or especially in this politics related space. So what I did was just hosting events, organizing events with youth to be able to talk about this, see how we can overcome, how we can connect to each other, this community building, basically, and linking youth organizations to each other and explaining like this is we have to work together. We're not like maybe you're a different part of the puzzle, but everybody has a role to play. So empowering youth to be able to see what their piece of the puzzle was. But I must say, Maria, that at first I really didn't realize how much of a privilege this question was about mental health, because I soon learned in that international space while talking to youth from, the small island states or or parts of the world that are being already hit directly with extreme weather events, for example, that being able to discuss a mental health topic without directly experiencing climate change that much is really a privilege. Like for them, it wasn't, I mean, it could still be something to talk about, but they had way bigger.
Bigger issues. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really had to learn that. And now I'm trying every time I talk about it to mention that, of course, it's important. We should not say it's not important because there are bigger issues, because it's really a thing amongst youth that work in this field.
Yeah.
Um, but it's important to acknowledge that it is also a privilege to be able to talk about this.
Yeah. And maybe just to harp on that issue, what what are some of the techniques that you and like your community use to deal with mental issues or to have to improve their mental health? You know, just so that our viewers can also pick a leaf or two.
Yeah. Um, I think we didn't really use any like methodologies or models, or sometimes the solutions are quite simple and then we forget about them because they are so simple. So for us, the solutions were really creating a safe space, which could be an event or an organization, um, and then make sure that um, we make sure that everybody feels seen and that everybody can talk about their worries. And for me, handling this question was really a matter of talking about it. That was the first step because it wasn't being discussed when I started that much.
Yeah.
And I soon learned that even a lot of the politicians and the diplomats that worked on climate also had this struggle
Mm-hmm.
with the topic, because if you have to work on it every day and you see the numbers,
Nothing.
but you know they
Yeah.
are actually people or resources,
Mm-hmm.
or natural habitats disappearing, it's really challenging. So the first thing that we did was basically break open that space and allow people to see that it was an issue and that it was, we could talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first step, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, people kind of found each other. Like it didn't really need a lot of guidance.
Yeah.
So it was a really, how do you say it? I not a really technical or science based approach. It was really intuitional.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of intuition went into that because it's a soft topic, which I actually think is a really um, one of the most difficult ones if we talk about softer topics,
Yeah.
because then people are really vulnerable,
Yes.
and we tend to avoid those discussions or conversations, especially on a policy level. Like if you remember all the spaces, if ever emotion got involved in the negotiations at the UN, people would say, "Oh, you're just using emotions to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
Like get this, make sure that we get this policy through for your country." Well, if I ever saw emotion at the diplomats expressing emotion, it was because they talked about their islands disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
But the emotion just totally left the room if we discussed how can we save what is left, how can we work together, and then no eye contact was made because they all talk into their microphones
Mm-hmm.
and not they don't
Yeah,
even
not
make eye
eye
contact.
contact. Yeah.
Yeah, for me that was really, really shocking. I truly cannot believe that we actually can solve such big issues if we don't make that human connection.
Yeah.
Even though uh, politics might have lost it, but we might have to go out and be vulnerable to get
I
to the core
agree.
of the issue.
I agree with you. I think also the thing that I noticed at the UN is that a lot of people, and maybe it's the structure of the UN that needs to be revamped, is people are more focused on getting their 2 minute bite, and they want to say their piece without empathy, without thinking about how is this affecting someone else, and is this really what I should be saying, and do I really need 2 minutes to say this, or why can't I have like a Talanoa dialogue instead, and speak with the people who are actually being affected. I think that maybe the way that they handle negotiations should be revised if things are to change. That's just how I think. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe I'm crazy. But
No,
yeah.
I think we're just a different generation.
Yeah. And
And
to
yeah.
what you said about the slowness of it all, how do you think that it can change? Because I'm also tired. I have spoken to like five different people who have all been to the cops, and they all say that they are just so tired of every single year you're going back and you're discussing the same issue over and over again, and there's no real tangible solution. So for you, what do you think can be done to change that or to make it better?
Oh, that's such a big question. For me, it is a really big question because I've been thinking about this ever since visiting my first COP climate negotiations. Um, and I've actually discussed with some people the like, is it possible to go out and solve this, or at least try to solve as much as we can without the space of the UN
Hmm.
being there, or like how much do we need policies, or do we
Yeah.
need um, the people? And when I say the people, I don't mean it's up to individuals, because you hear that sometimes. But when I say the people, I mean there's people behind big companies. There's people that work in governments, and I've kind of switched to thinking that that's where the start of the solution lies. So if you have a lot of people in that UN space that don't really care about the topic, then it is the wrong people. So if it's, I don't think it's up to us to make them care. I mean, the youth movement's really trying, but it starts with that something inside of a person,
Yeah.
and then it goes out into the world if we start acting upon it. If we start to care about the topic, if we see the urgency of it. And I think a lot of people are just kind of stuck in the system right now of how things have always been going, which is the worst thing. Uh, I believe you can say this is how it's always done. Well, things are constantly
Yeah.
changing. But a lot of people are afraid of change, I think.
Yeah. That's
So
true.
yeah, I don't really have a good answer on that question because I'm still figuring out how we can actually change this, and if I want to try to change things from the inside of, could be from an organization or inside the UN, or the solution would be more to just do it yourself
Yeah.
outside of these spaces that take too long to create systemic change within these big corporations, institutions,
Hmm.
because we really don't have time.
Yeah.
If we acted upon what we knew in the 80s, then we could have the time to make a transition to maybe a different system within the UN. But I feel like with this pressure of time, the impact is just somewhere else. Maybe it's not the repeating every year of people coming together to do mostly talking and do our best to write policies that might have a lot of effects within these countries. I don't think there's nothing being done there. I think we do try really hard. A lot of people Not everyone, but a lot of countries and people try really hard to work together. Um, but if just a few are blocking the process, then you're done.
Mhm.
So most of the people get it and want to do something, but we have this system with the UN, the way things are now, that if a few people do not want to join us in this change, then it's blocked. Then we get something way less than what we actually want, or we don't get anything at all.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm just trying to figure out, should we then work together with all the parties that do want to go ahead, and then let the rest just
Stay
figure out for
behind.
themselves. Yes, figure it out for yourselves. We don't have time to talk with you over and over.
Mhm.
It's really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least I can say now that we're having a new president who um, is all for the climate. Hopefully, things will, move on, because I know most of, especially with the finance stuff of it, was being blocked by the US. I'm sorry to say this on live camera, but it's the truth. I mean, everyone knows it, because of the Republican agenda. So hopefully, with the new president, things are going to be a little bit different. But still, like you said, um, we it might be better to move on with those who are for moving forward, rather than stalling ourselves with those who just don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That's a really good summary of what I just said in a really
Yeah.
long explanation.
Yeah, but I liked your explanation because it comes from somewhere and people can understand exactly what
Mm.
you're saying. Okay, so the other thing I would like to ask you about is that, so I read your website and it says that you're a humanitarian and you actually worked at a refugee camp sometime. I don't know which year. So would you mind shedding some light on that side of your life, and how did it influence your life now?
Um, yeah, beautiful question. I remember that a lot of boats arrived in Greece, with a lot of people fleeing their country on the Mediterranean Sea. Some of them ended up in Italy. A lot of them ended up on Greek islands. And for me, I mean, the Netherlands and Greece is not that far away. Europe, yeah, I mean, you could be there in a day. Um, and I heard about this going on when I was still studying. And a friend of mine, she went to Greece to help people that were arriving on the boat. So it was really a humanitarian crisis. Like,
Mhm.
it's still a humanitarian crisis, but then so many boats were arriving and there was not enough help. There were not enough people to, make sure that the children and the that were soaking wet in their clothes that arrived on these boats actually had somewhere to go. Like, there wasn't anything set up, because you don't expect hundreds of boats arriving on such a small island like all of a sudden.
Mhm.
um and I was still studying then, so I kind of chose my minor based on this subject. I did global development issues as a minor, because I knew that with that I would get some time off to actually go and do humanitarian work. And it wasn't really allowed to go to Greece because it was also a very dangerous situation sometimes. But then I kind of I don't think it's smart to say it on camera, but I'm finished studying now, so it's okay.
Okay.
So I kind of faked an autograph of someone that was supposed to, help me while I was there, but
Right.
I just went by myself. I was 21,
Wow.
and I just said, I'm gonna go there because this is so close to home, and why shouldn't I go and help if I have the time and the privilege? So I traveled to Athens, to Greece, and of course, I did my research. I didn't go unprepared because it also could be really dangerous to go unprepared into a situation with a lot of people from different cultural backgrounds, with a lot of traumas as well. I'm not educated for that at all, so I had to be really careful. But I thought, if I can distribute food to the people, that would be even a major help. I mean, they were lacking the basic human necessities that you need to actually survive.
Mhm.
So I just went there, and I remember walking into an illegal camp on my first day and being really overwhelmed, because these are things you only hear about in the media, and the media portrays it in a certain way. And then you actually get to meet the people behind the stories.
Yeah.
And it's quite strange to say it was a really wonderful experience, but it was, because it really showed me that, even though sometimes people tell us otherwise, we are so alike, everyone, that it really could be me on a boat seeking help somewhere else. If the
Mhm.
slightest thing goes wrong, if your country decides to be at war with another country,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that strange to lose your home or your country. And
Mhm.
I saw so much brotherhood between the cultures and the people aiding each other. A lot of people came to help from all over the world in that situation. I
Mhm.
mean, I was 21 then, and I eventually ended up coordinating a project with a lot of international volunteers that were
Mhm.
way older than me. But I had like 3 weeks time to spend in this camp. Um, and it was really heartbreaking, and there were a lot of situations that I don't think would even be appropriate to talk about on camera, because I don't want to trigger anyone. Or um,
I
but I
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, it was really, it was heartbreaking, but it was also, I felt finally like I could do something.
Mhm.
Like, I've been waiting at home to be able to do something, because this could be me, and I'm sitting here warm and nice and everything's good. And I I felt like, if my children would ever ask me, what did you do when all these boats arrived, and I would say, well, not much, I could never explain that.
Mhm.
Um, but it is still heartbreaking, because a lot of people that I met then, and I'm 25 now, so that's 4 years ago, are still not being placed in a home or assigned to a country, or even still in the same camps that are now
Mhm.
legal camps and continue to be moved to other places. So I cannot imagine living in basically a box.
Yeah.
It's some sort of box, if you're lucky, for 4 years, and
Wow.
not seeing your relatives, and it's
Wow.
really heartbreaking.
I can imagine. It actually reminds me, but I will not like go into the story. I'll just it's like if you do have time, there's a book called Tell Me You're Afraid, and it narrates the story of a she was a Somalese Olympic runner. She went to the Olympics in China, and her country was at war, and so she decided to seek a better life for herself, and try like through all the struggles and the tribulations of crossing from Somalia to the Mediterranean. And
Mm,
unfortunately, her story doesn't end really well, but it gave me an appreciation of life and of food that people take for granted, because
yeah.
she went through all the like struggles of not eating, not having water, and everything else that you can imagine happening to a woman on that journey. um and so like I applaud you for doing something on the other side, because I don't know of anyone who has actually gone to a camp like that and helped people who are seeking help for that. So like thank you so much for, even if you did it illegally, but at least you did something which goes a long way,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wouldn't advise anyone to just, go into this camp, because it turned out well for me. Like, I was able to deal with it quite properly. I'm not traumatized by the experience, but I do know some volunteers who did came back quite traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just by seeing the whole situation.
Yeah.
That's not even by living in the situation.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
agree.
it's been really a mirror for me to take a look at my own privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and the unfairness of decisions being made by certain people in the world, and that
Yes.
affects so many people that have nothing to do with those decisions.
Yeah.
and me being able to travel back to the Netherlands without anyone questioning my travels. Uh, yeah, it's just it puts things in
In
perspective, really.
perspective. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Okay, let's move to our more lighter topic, which is about your Curious platform.
Mm.
Could you tell us a little bit more about it? Most of it was in Dutch, and I can't really translate Dutch that well. So maybe you could just explain what is the Curious platform and what inspired you to start it.
Yeah. So I think that was also 3 or 4 years ago that we started it. Me with a mutual friend, and basically we noticed that for every interesting event we had to travel to Amsterdam, which is for Dutch principles, it's quite far. It's only an hour and a half by train. I know for some countries that's like you're basically neighbors, but for us that's the other side of the country,
Mhm.
because we live in the south of the Netherlands. And for everything interesting, we had to go up to train for an hour and a half. Um, and we were complaining about this. And then we thought, well, maybe we should just organize it ourselves. Interesting event for young people.
Mhm.
So we asked our friends and people around us, like, what are the topics that you're interested in? What do you want to discuss? What's on your mind? And we basically let them decide what they wanted to see. And we looked for interesting people and speakers that could talk about this topic, and then put them all into a room in the local theater that supported us in this. Um, and then hosted several events about, we did one about the stress society, because that was a topic people really wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
We also did one about modern love because it's quite tricky now with all the apps, and a lot of people were kind of confused because it's quite different than how my parents and my grandparents used to uh,
Relate.
relate. Yeah. Um, so it was really a community platform for youth where they could ask their questions. That's why it's called Curious. Like, if you want to know something about a topic, let us know, and then we'll organize something to answer your questions if possible.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is it still? Are you still doing it? Is it still active?
Well, we've been non-active for the past 2 years because I was quite busy with the UN youth
Oh
representative
yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But we recently did a podcast, and that was like the first thing that we started doing again. So could
Yeah,
be that
hopefully
we,
there'll be more of those.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. The other interesting thing about you is that you were part of the Vogue class of 2020. Congratulations.
Thank
I think
you.
you're the only one I know who is, now I can say high fashion. Is that what they say?
Oh, I
Um,
have no idea. I was
yeah,
really
that's
honored
that's
though, but
yeah, that's what they call like people who are featured in Elle and Vogue magazine. They call them the haute couture, if that's how they pronounce it in French. So, could you tell us what kind of fashion do you think is sustainable or like climate friendly? Like when you were in the Vogue class, what kind of fashion appealed to your sense of sustainability?
hmm,
Yeah.
I
Or
think
if
it's
you just want to tell us how was the Vogue class, that's also fine.
well, that experience was of course amazing. No, it's really quite different to do a photo shoot instead of standing in the rain protesting and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, no, I was really honored to be able to be part of that um, experience. And I think it's really interesting that you asked me a question about fashion, because not many people do, but a lot of people assume that I am um, yeah, really interested in sustainable fashion, which I actually am. So
Hmm.
this makes me think about, oh, I actually am sort of a sustainable fashion ambassador,
Yeah, you
but I
are.
don't really, yeah, I don't really see myself like that because it's become part of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I had very little money for the last few years. So my way to shop sustainably was basically thrifting or secondhand,
Hmm.
which is quite a challenge sometimes. If you have a special event, you can't really go out thrifting and say, I want to dress for this.
Hmm.
Um, so I see it as treasure hunting. For me, it's a lot of fun. I know local stores that have, good items sometimes, and I just pick that out. But um, I try now. I'm starting to earn a little bit more money to support brands that have a sustainable vision,
Mhm.
um, which don't necessarily have to cost that much more. But thrifting a $10 pants is definitely different than buying a $100 sustainable pants
Yeah.
for my wallet, especially. Um, yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people ask me questions about where I get my clothes from, and but I don't really see myself um, as a fair fashion ambassador. But it's just something that I like to do.
Mhm.
I embedded it in my lifestyle, just like you choose the food that you eat consciously, and I think I stopped buying fast fashion 5 years ago now.
So what's fast fashion?
Fast fashion for me are all the shops that change their whole, like they don't know the 4 seasons anymore. It's like 7, 8 seasons, maybe more a year.
Wow.
Like if you go into this shop 1 week and you go back another week, it's already items have been changed.
Mhm.
Um, so the process of making it, designing it, making it, delivering it to a country, hanging it in the shop, it's really fast. So it's literally fast fashion. Um,
And where
and
do you think those clothes go? I mean, if they're changing them that fast, then where do they put the clothes for the next year?
yeah, no, a lot of this is really shocking, but a lot of the clothes that they don't sell, they burn.
What?
So you have all this natural material that has gone into this making of this cloth. The people that made the clothes, which
Yeah.
often don't have very good working conditions, and then if they don't sell it, they burn it.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
not good.
or landfills sometimes, or
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Someone needs to innovate for that sector because that's a lot of waste.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Um I think a lot of people don't realize that it's one of the biggest polluters as
Yeah.
well, the fashion industry, because there's so many liters of water circulating in making a jeans.
Mhm.
Like that, that's thousands of liters of water.
Mhm.
If you think you could shower less or eat less meat, but still buy 10 new pants a week or something,
Mhm.
um, I mean, there's no wrong, and I feel people do what they can do, but I feel like a lot of people don't really know that this is such a big polluter as well. That
Yeah.
everything we wear has a consequence.
Yeah. That's true. And I think that maybe we need to be more uh, sensitive, or I don't know what the word is. Like, we shouldn't just go and buy things on a whim just because we want something if we already have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thanks for helping me understand. I really didn't know that clothes were burned. That's something new that I've learned from you. Okay. So, we're winding down, and I would like to ask you what book you're currently reading and what books you would recommend to our viewers. Because I know
Okay.
you love reading. I check out your Instagram posts and I see that you do read from time to time.
I do. I read a lot. I read so much. I have a lot of unfinished books because I'm
Okay.
a bookaholic, that I buy a new book and then I'm like, oh, but you didn't even finish the last one. But this is also so interesting.
Yeah.
So yes, if I'm not really materialistic, but when it comes to books, um, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also interesting, all this knowledge in the world.
Mhm.
But I'm currently reading, and I have it here with me. But I think it's going to be mirrored, or it's not.
Oh,
No,
I
it's
can see it, Braiding Sweetgrass. I've heard of that book
yeah,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. And I think it's one of the best books I ever read, and I haven't even finished it
Huh.
because it's so beautifully put. It's like a poem, like a book. She
Mm-hmm.
describes everything just so wonderfully, and our connection to the earth, and also the wisdom of indigenous people.
Yeah.
So amazing. I'm really in love with this book, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look out for it. The one this is what I'm reading now. I haven't finished it. I'm sure you've
Oh,
read it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't
That's
ever
on my
read it.
favorites list. Yep.
I read other books of his, but I never got the chance to read this one. So now that I have it, I hope I can finish it too.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you want to know a fun fact about The Alchemist?
Yeah.
I read, I don't know, that Paulo Coelho he wrote the book when he finished the Camino Frances, so the same hiking route that I did to Santiago de
Wow.
Compostela.
That's cool.
That's what I heard. It's a really good story if he did, though, but
Yes,
I
because
can
then
kind of
you're
imagine.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. That will even give me the oomph to finish reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's been really amazing having you. Are there any like last words you want to share with our viewers, like words of encouragement, or do you have any questions for me?
Ooh. Um. Yeah. Maybe. How are you holding up during
Um,
this time? That's my question for you.
my husband said terribly.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not been easy because we've been so the lack of interaction with friends. Like, I really cherish physical contact, so not
Yeah.
being able to see people has been like really, really hard. And the way that I've been trying to deal with it is volunteering. So I volunteer at the soup kitchen. I think you saw that one of my posts on that, and I'm looking for other places to volunteer because I think I've kind of had enough of staying at home by
Yeah.
myself. I mean, with us, it's just the two of us, and you know, it's high time we went out and met people. So hopefully the vaccine comes and we can go
Yeah.
out and meet people. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I can imagine
besides that,
that.
I'm looking like for outdoor winter activities to do,
Mm.
just to like calm my mind and crazy stuff, lying in the snow and getting silly.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you do things like that, I would love to see a picture of it.
Okay. I'll make sure to take pictures.
Yeah. If you make a snow angel, send me a picture of your snow angel.
Okay, I
That would
will.
definitely lighten my day.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, my husband's asking, you do get snow in Netherlands, don't you?
Yeah, we had snow a few days ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I would imagine. Okay.
we do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you so much, FK, for being a part of our show. I'm sure
Thank
people are
you for
going to
having
learn a
me.
lot from it. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
continue to inspire and amaze us in your on your Instagram feeds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful to be a part of this and see you again and talk to you again.
Same
Even
here.
though it's from our living rooms, but
Yes.
still, it's good to be connected like this.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a great rest of your evening,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and see you on Instagram and hopefully see you this. Will you be at the COP in London? I don't know, Glasgow.
I'm not officially invited anymore, but I might be there to distribute chocolate or anything.
Okay.
You know?
That's always a good reason.
We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye, Maria.